Well, let's talk now to Chris Southworth. He's the Secretary-General of the International Chamber of Commerce in the UK. Great to see you again, Chris. Now, look, it wasn't long ago that you and I were talking about the potential trade deal between the US and the UK. And what does this ruling, what's it going to mean for deals like that and with other countries?
Well, let's be honest. I mean, the world's moved on, and that's hard for the US to understand, but that's the truth. There's no such thing as a vacuum in global trade. You know, when one country steps back, in this case the US, everybody else steps forward. So, you know, all this means is a lot more uncertainty. We're moving into a new phase where there are legal challenges on the US side, and that adds to the uncertainty that's already existed since Liberation Day. What's interesting about this is it's coming from 5 small companies in the US. These are the same companies that the US administration are saying that they are supporting. And it opens potentially the floodgates for a whole bunch of other legal suits coming from not only more US companies, which we understand there is a pipeline of those, but also coming from, foreign investors and also governments and potentially US consumers as well. Given the litigious kind of environment within the US, there is potential here for class action suits on rising costs and inflation and, the cost on, or the impact on living standards in the US.
And I'm thinking, though, about all of the negotiations that have been taking place in recent weeks. Because on the one hand, there seems no point in negotiating a tariff issue if the tariffs don't exist. But this ruling doesn't cover all of it, does it? I mean, you mentioned other companies, other countries, might put lawsuits through. But we've got aluminium, steel, and a whole lot of car sector stuff. There's still a lot to talk about, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And if you're in a negotiation with the US, I mean, this puts a huge question mark over all of those negotiations. And certainly anybody coming into negotiations, it will put a big question mark over those because it's not clear what the legal position of the US is or what they are asking everybody else to do. The bigger point here is the economic damage. The damage is done, and everybody else is sort of moving forward. As much as the rest of the world wants to work with the US is really important, especially for the likes of us in the UK. The truth is everybody else is moving on, and we just have to work with whatever's going on in the US, which is really uncertain. And given the legal challenges, this is going to go on for months.
You talk about the economic damage being done, so that the ramifications of that we'll continue to see. But what about what's going on in the United States? Because this was about boosting the US economy. They've collected more than $40 billion in border duties since these tariffs took effect. So how much of a blow is this to Trump's economic agenda?
Well, when you have legal action coming from the same small companies that the US administration is saying they are supporting, it gives you an indication of what we've said all along, that tariffs are not good for business and they're not good for consumers. And so none of this is certain. And in the end, tariffs just add more cost and inflation to consumers and business. It's not the right solution to the problem. And don't forget, the problem here is exactly the same problem that the likes of the UK and Western Europe and other Western economies, we all face the same problem. It's rising inequality and falling living standards, and tariffs are just simply not the right answer to that problem. And what you're now starting to see is challenges coming into the legal courts in the US on exactly that. It's starting to impact business on real terms. So it's a really interesting space, but it just adds more uncertainty for a lot longer period than perhaps we'd all want. And that hasn't on the rest of us.
I look forward to talking to you about this more in the days and weeks to come. Chris Southworth, the Secretary-General of the International Chamber of Commerce here in the UK.
Thank you.